Right, greetings to you lot. We're here in Arcadia Shopping Centre, just outside Warsaw. I have the pleasure, the privilege to welcome to you, dusted off from the past, the Maverick and Renegade from the bygone era, none other than the, what's the word? What's the word?
I don't know.
Well, I've run out of words.
Esteemed, I don't know. Is that the word? Esteemed?
Well, esteemed. It's got a little bit of a royal twang about it, isn't it? Royal twang.
Yeah.
I think.
Legendary.
Legendary.
I'm being too.
I think you are
modest.
I think you. Well,
the modest Jon Matrix.
The legendary modest. Here we see, ladies and gentlemen, the legendary modesty of the great Jon Matrix. In fact, a very modest guy. And when I met Jon, goodness gracious, I don't know what it was, 7, 8, 9, even 9 years ago now. Yeah. Him and the lovable Mr. Torero were kind of a Wild West duo. I remember rocking up like a respectable establishment character, rocking up in this little dive cafe on Oxford Street for a day game boot camp and being introduced to Jon. And they were a couple of mavericks. I thought, I really did. I thought, what have I let myself in for?
Yeah. We were a couple of mavericks, to be fair.
But what I think was amazing about the weekend was that you were such complementary characters. Because Tom was the live wire, the kind of the comic, the wit, the absolutely when he needed to, generating attraction in girls and holding the frame. But he had this wild wit, which you were more the Clint Eastwood of the duo. Yeah. You said, did you know that? And this is probably a cinematic first. When Clint Eastwood was offered the role in, I think it was the first film, A Fistful of Dollars, I think it was, which set the scene on the spaghetti western tradition. As an actor, because I flirt with the film industry and I have an interest there, he read the script and he said, I've got too many lines. That is unheard of for an actor because they're always looking to see how big their part is.
Right.
And the revolutionary part of that character was the fact that he says so little and yet delivers so much. So really, we are looking at the love child of Clint Eastwood here today, ladies and gentlemen.
I reckon he picked the wrong trail. Or he could have picked the wrong town.
Get 3 coffins ready.
Huh?
See, that's what I want to talk to you about. He's feeling real bad.
Huh?
My mule. You see, he got all riled up when you fired those shots at his feet.
Hey, you making some kind of joke?
No. You see, I understand you men were just playing around, but the mule, he just doesn't get it. Of course, if you were to all apologize... I don't think it's nice, you laughing. You see, my mule don't like people laughing. It's the crazy idea you're laughing at him. Now, if you apologize like I know you're going to, I might convince him that you really didn't mean it. My mistake. 4 coffins.
But that this is a big thing that I want to, by way of introduction, we're just doing a little bit of a vlog. We're going to then actually do much more of an extensive podcast on a range of topics, because it's a long time since I've met Jon, and he is just got back into this stuff and launched himself into this stuff, and is now based in Warsaw and living and globe-trotting around Europe for a year. So there's a lot to talk about. I'm not going to try and do it in 5 minutes. This is just an intro. But we'll thread this into a podcast that we'll be doing in a longer form later. So, yeah, but to come back to the point, this keeping your mouth shut, particularly for the more mature dude, is a really important quality. And what I noticed about when I'm hanging out with Jon, the streets of the shopping centres, he only speaks when it's necessary, except when he's talking about diet. But and he delivers information when he sees that it's needed, because one of the big weasels is the chatter that goes on in your head and then comes out of your mouth, and it stops you from being centered and still. And we both meditate, and coming from a place of stillness when you're approaching a girl, and not a place of mental busyness.
Yeah.
Any thoughts so far after that mammoth introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. The chatting too much can also be a way of avoiding a silence. So you're trying to fill every void, every silence with chatter, and actually it can be more, although it is very tempting to do that because you want to fill that gap when there's a silence. It can actually be more powerful not to say anything and to just allow that space.
During an approach in the street, can you give us, you've got back into this stuff after a pretty much 10-year relationship. Can you put some flesh on the bones there? Give us a couple of stories or anecdotes of your experiences since you've arrived in Central Europe. Where you've seen it work, where you've put that into practice, where you've kept your mouth shut during the course of the conversation.
Yeah. Well, I would say you don't do it at the beginning. If you do it right at the beginning, the chances are she'll walk away. So when you do an approach, the feeling of quote unquote approach anxiety that we've all felt, women feel that as well. When you approach them, they feel this awkwardness, and if you give them an opportunity to get away at the beginning, they'll take it and they'll leave. So just purely to diffuse the awkwardness. So pauses would need to come, I would say, not right at the beginning. It would come a little bit later on during the conversation, giving her a chance to speak, because it can also be a tendency for you to want to just talk all the time. Although it's important for the man to do a lot of the talking, there needs to come a point where you've got to shut up and you've got to let her create the void and let her fill the void, as opposed to you just keep filling the void yourself.
So how do you know when that point has arrived?
when she starts talking a bit more. And I'm generalising. You're going to get some girls that immediately start talking, but for the most part, most girls will be a bit standoffish at the beginning, and then once you get to a certain point in the conversation, which we used to call the hook point, that's when she starts to invest in you, and she starts to invest in the conversation, and she starts to talk more, and when she does, then you have to let her talk.
It's an extremely subtle thing, isn't it? Because when you start, you've got to generate this energy almost, haven't you? And then you've got to read what's in front of you.
Yeah.
And I think you can be really quite experienced in terms of approach. You can be quite experienced in applying the model, the method.
Yeah.
But the kind of almost the thing that separates the men from the boys is responding to what's in front of you.
Correct. That's right. If you're stuck
in any area of life, almost.
Yeah. That's right. So having a model or some kind of structure when you're a beginner is good, because it gives you something to follow, but it can also take you away from actually watching and responding to what's happening in the moment. So there'll be times when you might need to go do something completely different based on what's happening in front of you. But there's a few things that you can usually tell by if a girl's being very, very closed at the beginning, very standoffish. when she starts to engage, her demeanour will change. Her body language might open a bit more. If she had her arms crossed or folded, they might open. She'll start asking you questions. That's a really good sign.
It's kind of a moment when you realise that you can kind of relax a little bit.
Exactly. At the beginning, when you go in, the weight is on your shoulders.
Totally.
And you have to fill all the gaps. You have to be the one to create the conversation. She's not going to do it. You can't go in and just say something and just stop and wait for her to talk and wait for her to say thank you. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. So we I had a couple of. It's interesting how you're always learning. You're refreshing. You're taking a kind of a closer perspective. On kind of old stuff. When you meet new guys who've got a lot of positive energy, Jon feels like he's the cork that's popped out the champagne bottle at the moment, metaphorically speaking. Yeah. Anyway, the two little things I've noticed and I've picked up because I've been watching Jon is the absolute importance of the cheeky smile at the very beginning when you're first approaching you. It's like, would you like to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's funny that
fundamentally important.
As I've got back into this now, I've realised it's one of the most important things, if not the most important, is that when you go in, you have the look or the smile, because then right off the bat, she knows that you're hitting on her, and it's really important, because otherwise, what you don't want is to go in and in 3 or 4 minutes into the conversation, she says, "What's this about?" That's the worst thing that can happen. Ideally, you want to go in and you want her to giggle before you've told her why you've stopped her, and if she does that, you have absolutely nailed it. And it happens. It will happen every single time, virtually every single time, when you do it right. But the thing with the smile, with the look, is you can't fake it. It will only happen when you feel good. So you can't, if I'm not feeling good, if I'm stressed or I've had a bad night's sleep, I cannot fake it. I can't go in and do the cheeky smile. It just doesn't happen, because it has to be a smile that comes from your whole face, from your eyes and the mouth. If you just smile with your mouth, it looks creepy, right? So it's this whole face smile that you do, and when you do it right, immediately their face lights up, because it's infectious, that kind of look that you give someone, and that is very difficult to teach someone, because it's not something you can just kind of turn on when you don't feel it. You need to be feeling good in order to do it.
That's a very good point. But before we come on to just flesh out a little bit more, there's something that is troubling me. Why do I look like a dwarf next to a giant?
And the funny thing is, I think Alex is actually a little bit taller than me. But yeah,
he's such a skilled
pro. Sit up straight in your chair. Well, just sit
well,
up,
I'm trying.
Just sit up straight. Right. So
you're
what it is?
still taller.
Yeah. So there you go. How's that? What it is? I've got short legs and a long body, and maybe it's the other way around for you. I don't know.
Interesting. So, and this is there's a couple of important points. I've just approached a Ukrainian girl. Didn't speak hardly any English or Polish. I speak a little Polish. It was like a terrible situation in a way. Someone doesn't speak the same language, and yet I'd approached her somehow in the right way, in a fizzy kind of fun, bouncy, jumped off of my seat kind of way. I think you can go wrong with a little bit of fizzy childishness when you're going into an approach, rather than a severe, excuse me, because that makes you light up. And it was a clumsy, ching-dong type of interaction. And yet, she was smiling, I was smiling. When I holded her hand, I was like, no, you're not going. I wouldn't let her go. And the thing that made me realise that I had got it right on this occasion, the introduction, the cheeky grin and the smile, was she was like, no, I'm not giving you my number. Now you'd think, oh, that's bad. I saw her. The reason she said no in a kind of alarmed way was because her husband. I saw her with her husband just kind of like 30 seconds later. She was worried. Yeah. But so what was interesting, she was loving the interaction, the compliments. Yeah. She stayed. And yet But when it came to closing the number, it was good. So actually, you know, a no is a good thing, because a clear no, because she's actually you've actually means that you're saying I'm interested in you romantically.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You're getting a clear signal.
Correct.
You're in a good place there.
Yeah.
Now
that's
the other thing I wanted to just touch on, as well as the cheeky smile, was the challenging part. And I think the maturer dude, perhaps certainly for the open, it's nice to have this fizz and this cheekiness. But I also think once you're through that initial threshold and you've got the girl's attention, it probably is time to switch gears, isn't it, John? And would you like to say a little bit more about challenging? And can you give me some examples? He approached, it's interesting this, after a day, you were a bit groggy yesterday morning, and after a day out walking around, it wasn't until like 7:30 at night, when we were actually just going for dinner for a friend's birthday party, that he saw a really super attractive girl walking across the square, just the right look and the right age, really slam bam in your quick, effective number, and there's been some text exchange afterwards.
Yeah.
So can you just talk a little bit more about the challenging side of the approach? Particularly, perhaps think about the maturer dude.
Yeah. Well, I would say that it's best that all of it's done tongue in cheek. So the whole approach, really, whenever you're challenging, it needs to be tongue in cheek. You should never really be dead serious when you're challenging, because then you're playing a bit of a dangerous game, because then they can get offended.
I'm still shrinking.
Sorry, it's because I need to sit up now.
No.
If everything's done tongue in cheek, then you can actually get away with being quite rude, because she knows you're playing with her. But anytime you go to being serious, then you risk offending her. Okay, so
tell me the difference between serious and challenging. But I want you to give me an example. Tell us what happened with that girl on the street last night.
I'm trying to remember what happened.
Or any of the girls who've approached us this last week.
Okay, it's not. So she was. Let me think. I'm trying to think of an example.
You were challenging a girl yesterday about in Slovakia and Bulgaria. They're very blunt. So you were actually challenging her about her country folk being rude, and not liking it. I overheard that.
Yes. But again, it was done tongue in cheek. So what did I say? I was talking about the difference between. We're in Poland. She was Slovakian, and we started talking about how I find that Eastern European people tend to be. They're not happy people. They just have this miserable face. They have a miserable face all the time, and certain places are worse than others. Like I found Bulgaria to be the worst for that. It's just the way that the people are. They're not nasty. It's just that's how they are. They're just not an emotional. They don't show their emotions on their face when they talk. And Slovakia was kind of like that as well. Maybe not as bad. But then I found Poland is definitely a difference. It's definitely a bit more. People are a bit friendlier here.
But what was impressive was that was a conversation. I overheard that section, in which it was just a kind of an ordinary conversation about, but it communicated. I have the confidence to have just a normal conversation with an attractive girl, and I'm not asking her questions. I'm not even necessarily teasing her. I'm actually just making a challenge about. It's a bit like the old. Oh, I remember this from a video you did about 10 years ago with the Spanish bird. I think it was up on a YouTube video. Spanish girl says, "Oh yeah, I'm from Madrid," and you went, "Madrid sounds a bit hot and dusty to me. Never fancied going to Spain."
Yeah. I don't remember that, but that's a good example.
I'll probably elaborate.
That's a good example, because what most guys will do is when she says Madrid, they'll try to connect with her on Madrid, and they'll say, "Oh, I've been to Madrid. It's really nice there. I love the beaches." That's the kind of conversations you'll have with a friend, right? But you want to, even if you do like Madrid, it's much better to actually do the opposite and to say, you know what, Madrid's too hot for me, too dusty, too hot, don't like it, something like that. Essentially, you could as an experiment for some of you guys, try doing this. When you do an approach, disagree with everything that she says. Everything she
As
says
an
to you,
experiment.
as an experiment.
Yeah.
See what, but it needs to be done playful. But just either disagree, disbelieve, or something along that theme with every single thing she says, and you'll find you actually get a very good reaction. And if you do the opposite and you're just nice to her and you agree with everything she says and you have a nice conversation, it won't go anywhere. And this is what it came back to me. So when I got back into day game for the first time after 10 years, it felt like I went straight back into it, like I hadn't left. But one thing I noticed I was doing on the first day or two when I was going out was I was being way too nice. I was having these conversations, but they were fine, but there wasn't any spark to them, you know. And then it clicked, and I remembered. I was like, okay, I realised what I'm doing wrong. And as soon as it clicked, and for the next couple, I did completely the opposite. Everything they said, I just was like, I don't believe you. Girl says she's from wherever. She's Greek. I was like, no, you're not Greek. I know what Greek people look like. This is not a Greek girl. And then she tells me what she does for a living. I'm like, no. This is, you know what I mean? You just disagree. Disagree.
So you just did it to get yourself recalibrated.
Yeah, but the thing is, it totally works. It totally works. That's what they're looking for. That's flirting, essentially.
Yeah.
It's like
it could be teasing. It could be challenging. You can do both.
Yeah. That's how you speak the language of a woman, right? Is you go in. This is what they want. They want a man who can go in and have a playful, cheeky, fun conversation with them. That's going to do a lot more for you in your success than going in and just being nice and having a nice conversation. That's not really going to work. You might get the odd one or two that will respond to that. You'll get phone numbers, but they'll all flake. A lot of them will flake.
Yeah, that's a very common problem.
And that's why they flake, is because they just can't. They won't really remember you because you're not memorable enough.
All right, so we better wrap it up there. Thank you. That's really spot on and really good examples. I think we've actually invented a new approach to approach, which is the three key elements of any good approach is a bit of fizz, cheeky smile when you go in. Give yourself some energy, perhaps by running. Guys are often a bit afraid of running. They think, I'm too mature or old to be running. Run into the set. You create some energy, don't you? So that's number one. Number two is when she's staying, because she might go, you challenge, just as John has illustrated. And if you think calibrate yourself, experiment. And the number three thing is where we started, of course, is that find some stillness. You can find some stillness and be aware of where you are in the conversation and read the situation and her reactions. This is what you're looking for. You're looking for the moment of investment when she's going to start asking you questions. That's the third key thing is to be able to fall still and just sit in the silence, so to speak, because then you can start to do things physically within reason. Anyway, I seem to have managed to slip down again. I think John has got one of these chairs where he pumps himself up. There you go. We'll say goodbye. There's one thing obviously that we must always do in every vlog on the Art of First Dates. So, have you read any good books recently? Oh yeah, the Art of First Dates, that was good, isn't it? Volume 1 and 2.
Yeah.
What about Too Late Mate? Have you got the audio version? You have?
Yes.
Yeah, it was great, wasn't it?
Brilliant.
You've heard it here, lads. Right, strap on your balls, you bastards. We'll be doing a longer form podcast in due course. John is here, on a serious note, to help run a dating approach course 3 days next week. Goodbye from me and goodbye from him.